Talmud asks the following question. If a person is traveling in the desert and loses track of time to the point where he or she does not know what day of the week it is, how is one to keep Shabbat? Surprise, there are two opinions. One opinion is that one should count 6 days and observe Shabbat on the 7th. Another opinion is one should keep Shabbat the very next day, then count 6 more, and then keep Shabbat again. A talmudic dispute. Missing from this numerical discussion is any acknowledgement of the desperation of the person in that situation. How lost does one have to be to not know what day of the week it is, and not even being able to use the internet or Google to know what day it is? And yet, in spite of being so lost, it seems that the first concern of our sages is, how does this person keep Shabbat? What is it about Shabbat that holds such an essential place in the life and literature of the Jew? This is a moment where, sadly, it's easy to understand the Talmud's description. In many parts of the world, including in our own environment, it can appear that certain people don't know what day of the week it is. They don't know if it's night or day, or what is good and what is evil. You know, there was a discussion amongst our student boards of what should be under discussion today. And I agreed with them. We should focus on the beauty and on the warmth of Shabbat that we all heard earlier. You heard it in the pain of Nim's voice when he thinks of his friends. The loss, the horror of those parents wondering about the plight of their children. And I have to say that even at this moment, I'm debating. I ask myself, what is the responsibility in this moment? And also I have the limits of Shabbat, and there's a very tight program. So that I don't get in trouble with Sam, I'm going to tell you what I said to NBC without my papers. They asked, how do you feel in this moment, and what do you think is the appropriate response, and what will be your message? And I immediately thought of the lessons I learned from my teacher, the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, whose love of the Jewish people inspired a reality of a world where there is no place on earth where you don't have a Chabad presence. And it was Rabbi Sachs who asked the question, what drove him? What motivated the Rebbe? And he speculated, but here was a man who witnessed a time where every Jew in the world was hunted down in hate. His response was, let's create a space in all places of this world where every Jew is searched out in love. And I want to thank our non-Jewish friends who are partners in that effort. You might find us ironic, but there are many Jewish students who find their place in Jewish life and who come home to the Jewish people because of the encouragement of our non-Jewish friends. So we thank you for being here tonight, and we thank you for giving encouragement and support. to young Jews in a very difficult time. But still, and I'll do this very quickly. And I know that for some this is not relevant because you live these issues every day and you have this information. But I fear, and I believe I have reason to fear that most don't know some foundational facts that without them, it'll be difficult to navigate. It was difficult for many to navigate this past week. It'll be even more difficult in the coming days. So let me try to say this very quickly. 3 things. Please remember these 3 things. They're not the most important 3 things to know in life, but they're 3 things that every moral person needs to know now. Forgive if I'm saying the obvious, forgive me. Hamas, in their charter, calls for death of Jews everywhere. Don't believe me? Look it up. It's not about a conflict. The hate and the cold-blooded murder of men, women, and children, and I don't need to get into details of beheadings of babies here. There should be no hesitation. No one should ever be reluctant, slow, or hesitant to speaking truth and condemning ugly hate and violence and murder unequivocally. So that's one thing. Please always remember that. There's another thing that's important, and that's the conflict. And we're not going to resolve that tonight. But there's history that you all have to know. We all have to know. Every moral person has to know. In 1967, it sounds like a long time ago, Gaza was part of Egypt, and Judea and Samaria, otherwise known as the West Bank, was part of Jordan. Multiple Arab nations attacked the Jews to liberate, not Gaza, not the West Bank, but to liberate Jerusalem and Tel Aviv and uproot it with the stated mission. Look it up, don't believe me. To push, at that time, it was only 3 million. 3 million men, women, and children into the sea. The world wondered, could the Holocaust ever happen again? In 1967, if not for the miraculous victory, the stated mission of multiple armies were not to liberate Gaza or the West Bank, but it was to push 3 million men, women, and children into the sea. Miraculously, Israel won that battle. The PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, founded before 1967, was to liberate Israel. When we hear chants, even on our campus, for liberation from the river till the sea, this is an intellectual space. Emotions and feelings of belonging is wonderful, but we have minds. When you hear words and chants, liberation from the river until the sea, important that you know this. From the river until the sea, we have today 7 or 8 million Jews today. A White House correspondent was asked what should happen to those people. She said they should go back to Germany and to Poland. But in the Middle East, they'll tell you, different, you don't have to go anywhere, we'll take care of it right there. I would not be doing justice to the murdered children, to the young women who were raped and then burnt alive if I didn't tell you this fact. That the conflict, in the words of former Prime Minister Golda Meir, will come to an end when Hamas and the other haters start loving their children more than they hate ours. This is not about Gaza, friends. From the river till the sea, is Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, and every inch of Israel. Finally, a third thing. It's not going to be easy in the coming days, but think of the following. If they're not teaching it to you in the classroom here, I need to take a moment before Shabbat and say this. There were American heroes who took down the United Airlines plane from Philadelphia, from Pittsburgh. They were called heroes rightfully. No one said that they murdered the passengers by taking the plane down. You know who murdered those passengers? The hijackers. Those who took the plane down saved hundreds of lives that would have been killed had the plane gone into wherever, to the capital, to our nation's capital. If only the passengers on the airlines that hit the Twin Towers had the ability to take down those planes and save the towers and the thousands of lives they could have avoided. Taking down those planes saved lives. In Gaza today, there are two kinds of people. You're either Hamas or you're a hostage of Hamas. And those hostages are primarily Palestinians, who, if they leave their homes because they're in the line of fire, because the IDF, Israel Defense Forces, that's why they're called the IDF. For 2,000 years, there was no army to defend us. So there was pogroms, and then finally a Holocaust. Today, there's an army that's here to defend its children from those who want to murder them. So what happens now? Maybe it's in Michael's, maybe it's in the class of justice. And if it's not, I'm sure maybe Michael will teach it. Israel now has to go in to free its hostages, to protect its children, that this should never happen again. The hostages, the Palestinians hostages of Hamas, are being put in the line of fire. They're told, either if you leave your homes, we'll execute you. Otherwise, if Israel wants to defend its children, if I speak without a mic, can you hear me? Yeah. So I'll speak without a mic.